Hey now, and welcome to another edition of Refreshing Thoughts. I'm your host, Chris Fresh, and we're here to talk toys. The royal we, are here to talk toys and collectibles and nerdy stuff and everything that I'm into and hopefully you're into. Thank you to my good friends Julian James, Benny Mino, PG3, Jeff Tough Guy, and everybody at the Shine Worldwide. You can find them where all good rock music is found. And if you want to get access to Refreshing Thoughts early and ad-free via the Patreon app, patreon.com/C/Refreshing Thoughts podcast/membership, $5 Australian a month, which is I think a nickel in America these days, helps support the channel and gives you early and ad-free access to the shows, and also supports Geek Dudes and Hey It's the Podcast if you check out those other podcasts. But I'm here to talk about something that has caused a bit of a delay in Refreshing Thoughts, and something that all collectors that have a decent amount of collectibles have faced, and that's new shelving. I've been going back and forth on updating some of my shelves for a while. It's, you see everybody else's collections. You're always looking at how could I display mine? What do I think would look good? What would help me enjoy it more? And et cetera, et cetera. And I've moved a couple of times in the past few years, had some pretty big life changes. And I had these really big, I don't know if they were Billy bookcases, but they were Billy style bookcases with glass doors on them. And as you can see, I kept my Masters of the Universe items in 2 of them, and I kept my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 2 of them. And years ago, I had picked them up off Marketplace and for a pretty decent price. And I was thinking, I had young children, and my children are still young, but not that young. And you're sort of thinking, what's going to keep their little hands and minds away from the toys? Now, remarkably, and I've got special needs children, and everybody always marvels that they don't go for my toys, but they just don't. It's almost like a genetic instinct that we display and admire toys, and we don't play with them. And yeah, I've never, like, there's been 1 or 2 instances where my son Connor, might have ripped something, or so he likes moving stuff, but most of my figures are open. But for the most part, I haven't really had issues of kids going for my stuff. And when other people have other children visit and stuff, I understand it's hard for parents. It's stressful. I don't want guests to not want to come here because they're worried about their kids or people knocking over my collection and touching it. So I'm fortunate, but I've got a space that I can keep it separate. So really, the only real menace and danger to my collection has been Dirty Uncle Mitch, my co-host on Geek Dudes. Like, that dude just knocks everything over all the time. But he can't help himself. He's like a bull in a china shop. But yeah, for the most part, my stuff doesn't get knocked over, and it's usually just me out here. My kids do come out here, and my wife does occasionally. But I'm also conscious to be present in the house with the family. So I don't call this an escape. It's a happy place for me to come and visit, but I don't make it my only place. My family are my happy place, and but so the cabinets. You can see the floor's a bit uneven there. I'm pointing and you can't see what I'm pointing at. But the cabinets were just a bit worse for wear. And you can also see that the doors block a fair bit of display area. And people would go, well, why didn't you just take the doors off? It's because the cabinets needed to be updated. So, I've toyed around getting new Billy bookcases, because the other thing, and I don't know if you sort of want to zoom in and have a look yourself, is figures fall all the time. And when you sort of, I'm stacking stuff up everywhere because I don't have a lot of space. And it was sort of like, well, that's fallen forever. I'm never going to go into the cabinets to get them out, which was really frustrating and a bummer, because I sort of, when the room's out of sorts, I almost can't relax in here and don't want to be out here. And I don't know, do collectors go through those sorts of thoughts and feelings, particularly when you've got a ginormous collection like I do, where you fill a room with it? Does it stress you out when it's not bringing you joy? It certainly stresses me out. So yeah, it was time to do some changing. And the give you a look at why I'd go for the change. So here you can see I ordered some Billy bookcases from IKEA. And that's a side by side of how it looked with the old glass door cabinets and how it looks now. And how much nicer is it now? Like the colors pop so much more. I always highly recommend going white because it just helps with the colors stand out when you use black or other colors. The colors of the toys themselves get lost. And that's part of the charm, particularly of a lot of the older product. But yeah, it just feels refreshing, no pun intended. And yeah, but I tell you, it's hard because so you've got to move all those toys out. You've then got to get the cabinets out of there. You've then got to get the new cabinets in. And then you've got to get all those toys back in. Now, thankfully, you'll see weapons missing and all of this sort of stuff. It's a bit of chaos. I always view my collection like, what if I collected it like I was a kid? And all of these things were from my childhood and stuff. Like weapons would be missing. They wouldn't be in perfect condition. So to me, it's more about the representation and how they make me feel as opposed to their mintiness and their condition. Obviously, if I can get something in amazing condition, it's pristine and everything like that, that's great. But I'm also a realist. Like it's really expensive to collect that way. And mad respect to anybody that has mint figures with all their accessories and a tip-top collection. I have nothing but respect for that. But I'm not mint. I'm not tip-top. I'm not pristine, and neither is my collection. But my collection makes me happy, and that's what it's really about. And so, but as you can see, that's sort of the difference. And give you a look, there's a more finalized version and a more zoomed out sort of photo of the turtle shells. Now there's a lot more to my collection, but we're focusing on the Ninja Turtles and the He-Man. And here's how the He-Man cabinets turned out. How cool is that? So you'll see the new addition to my collection is the Mega Construx Havoc staff. Really cool piece. But so certain things pop up when you make these changes. You really start reviewing what makes the cut and what doesn't, because there was stuff I hadn't opened and put into my collection because I couldn't be bothered opening the doors. I've got a fair few Origins figures and some Masterverse figures because they're opportunistic buys. You see them on the shelves and you go, that's really cool, I want to get it. But I don't know if I need them. And I talked about on the previous Refreshing Thoughts where I was reviewing the Mondo Venkman and Sam Hain of the 2000X Mattel Triclops and He-Man that I got. I got them because I got excited when I found them on the shelves, but they were $26 Australian each and stuff. But they don't really fit into my collection, so they're sort of just sitting there around waiting for me to work out what I'm going to do with them. And I think I'm going to move them on. So if you want to buy them, I'll sell them to you at cost. Yeah, I don't think I've got room for them. Like maybe He-Man and Skeletor, and if they do a Fisto, Ram Man, and Trapjaw, like there are certain characters I like collecting, but I don't really have room for them. And I don't want to just keep dumping stuff on the floor and around because that's when it becomes cluttered. So yeah, it does cause a crisis of faith in terms of collecting. Also, some of my He-Man the vintage figures, while they'd been sitting in the cabinets for a long period of time, the rubber bands had gone on them. So even just moving them, the rubber bands disintegrated. And it was like, oh. And then it's like, am I going to, like my Rio Blast, for example, like his leg bands just were dust. And it's like, do I now upgrade him? Like, look for one with good rubber bands and stuff? Or is this, I'm not handy enough to replace the bands myself. I know some people do that. I don't have the patience. I'm a little shaky from medication I take, so it's very hard for me to do. And I don't really know anyone locally that would do it for me. So yeah, I don't know. And the other thing is Master Universe Classics figures, their ankles just dog shit. And I've got blue tack under some of their feet, which I don't like doing. I really wish figures would just stand on their own, but they just want to drop all the time. 2000X Scully, up the top, he fell like 50 times. And you'd be setting something up and then you'd hear that duck, duck of stuff falling. And it just drove me crazy. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you about, have you had experiences? Do you enjoy the process? I hate the process. Like, I love the result. Like, I'm so happy with how everything looks. Like, I've even got a actual blue giant Leonardo back there now. But and in the cases up there, you'll see Toka, Raza, and Toon Mikey. They're all vintage. That are from the late great Darren Filsels from Toy Power. He passed away very sadly a few years ago. And for me to have that's Toy Power podcast there, my favorite toy podcast. I love those guys. Darren passed away, and to have some items from his collection in my collection really means a lot. So I got some cases from Ultimate Figure Protection from Glenn. And it's funny, I left him a review, and Glenn said, he was very polite about it. But this is why a picture was in Glenn's head of, "Hey, idiot, you're putting the figures in upside down in the cases." And sure as shit, I was. So I had to go around and turn around all my figures because I'm just dopey. Like, even like flat pack furniture, I'll be honest, I felt the weight of these bookcases when they got delivered and stuff, and my wife and I were going to build them. She was mainly going to build them, and I was just going to lift. And it was like, nah. And I went on Airtasker, and I paid a really skilled person to come out, and he built 4 Billy bookcases in 50 minutes for $100. And I'm not ashamed to say I paid it, damn it, and I didn't have to deal with the stress of that. Poor Mitch and Jonesy did have to help me move cabinets. But yeah, I'm not good with my hands. I'm not handy. I'm not patient. So yeah, but it's yeah, it's cool. It's cool to have that done. Just there's a side by side once again. I really do think it looks a million times better. But without glass doors now, those falls are going to hit the floor. Let the figures hit the floor. I don't know if you can see. You can. If you look down the bottom, you'll see some black mats. I've gotten sort of gym mats or something from Bunnings. Like, you can get them in 4 packs, just jigsaw mats. And I'll put them down across my floor out here, and it's just a bit of a softer fall if the figures land. Hopefully they don't break. Particularly some of the older ones, they're going to be prone to do it. So yeah, it was painful. It was stressful. It was everything, but man, it feels good now that it's done. It's been a good week between getting the Venkman and Sam Hain and, getting these. It's sort of like, yeah, this is what I love. I love toys, and this is really cool, and it makes me happy. And yeah, just seeing it like this, hopefully, I don't know how long it will last, but yeah, it did also, it gives me pause to maybe slow down a little bit, take it easy. But yeah, speaking of getting new stuff, which is not slowing down, take it easy, I got some new wrestling toys. And I love doing a bit of an opening here, and I don't get a lot of modern Mattel stuff. I did get the Razor and Diesel recently, the Legends figures. But when I saw this guy, he was a ringside exclusive. But Wrestling Store Australia, here in Australia, they get a lot of figures from Zombie Sailor Toys, Ringside Collectibles, and I find them pretty reliable. And not always the cheapest, but it's not cheap to buy from America. When you're buying from an Australian business and stuff. I've never met them. Certainly not an influencer that's getting free stuff or endorsed to say that. These are just my experiences as a toy collector, and I'm talking to a fellow toy collector. But I had to get this guy. If you know anything about me, I am a huge ECW mark from the 90s. And getting a Paulie, he looks like the Penguin, doesn't he? Colin Farrell's put on a fat suit. Getting a Paul E. Dangerously, complete with his ponytail and everything, his headphones, he even comes with them. To get a Paul E. Dangerously in his ECW look, I know they say it's one night stand, which was a cool event, but he'll fit in as my late 90s Paul. Was a must get for me. He is a young me. I'm about 21 in this photo. Always bald, it seems. I'm like Lex Luthor. I got to meet Paulie. I know everybody knows him as Paul Heyman. I still call him Paulie. Paulie Dangerously. And his booking in ECW was like such an eye-opener for me. Like, as a kid that grew up on 80s WWF, and as somebody that became a mark, which I am, through the 90s, as my love of Bret Hart and Owen Hart and technical wrestling and all of that, and my palette expanded. And taking in WCW and then ECW, and discovering ECW in like 95, 96, like I was 16, 17 respectively. It just spoke to teenage me. And yeah, everybody talks about the violence and the tables and everything of ECW, and sure, that was there and that was cool. But what's underrated is the storytelling that they did, like with Raven and Tommy Dreamer and Taz and Sabu, and the coolness, and like the idea that they were shooting and doing all of this stuff. Like the Attitude Era pretty much ripped off ECW. And Paul Heyman, Paul E, throughout all his flaws, and he is a flawed man, much like I'm a flawed man. He influenced me greatly as a booker of professional wrestling. I booked Renegades of Wrestling and Wrestle Rock, and before that, Melbourne City Wrestling, and before that, Creative at All Star Wrestling, and even the NWE. If we're going back, I've worked in wrestling for 26 years now, and what Paul Heyman did creatively, like, lit a fuse under me, and still does. Like, I still sort of go back to watching ECW and how influential it was, and still resonates with me creatively to this day. So to have this really cool Paul E was a must get. Got his little lanyard there that he wears and stuff, but he'll go somewhere, like he doesn't really. I'll put him with some ECW stuff, but that was really cool. And another thing I love is WWF Hasbro figures. I've talked about them a lot, and Zombie Sailor does some of the best retro style figures, as they're called in the business. And it's controversial because a lot of people feel they're too realistic. Some people view them as a natural progression of what Hasbro's would have become. I don't know how I feel about them, but I ordered. He's done a part of the Savage Legacy collection, Macho Man Randy Savage. That artwork is garbage, but he's done that. Now, you're asking, why am I holding the figure like that? Well, I'm not going to keep him in packet. Okay, I'm going to open him. I don't particularly like that artwork. I'm going to open him on air right now. But if I was going to keep him in packet, his hat is off. It's like he's been punched. And I don't know if Wrestling Store Australia saw that before they packed it, but they did me dirty if I did see that. Maybe they knew I was going to open it. But it's sort of, nobody wants loose stuff like that bouncing around in the packaging. Like, that sort of sucked. But the card, that's some crisp cardboard, a nice bubble. Like, Zombie's packaging is phenomenal, although I just think that artwork's just terrible. Was it AI or something? This is his WrestleMania 7 look, but we're going to go to the back of the packaging, and we actually get to see a lot of figures that aren't out yet, and I'm going to get to them in a minute. But he does such a good job of Ron Rudat's artwork there, because he works with Ron Rudat, which I love. These cards are a nice touch. The points, like the old Hasbro figures, like, he does an amazing job. Now, as an ECW fan, I'm well serviced. Like Masato Tanaka, Roadkill, Too Cold Scorpio, the franchise Shane Douglas, the man, Francine, they've got so even Jensei Sasaki, or Hakushi, you could technically fit him in the ECW collection. I've got Ahmed Johnson and Hakushi on the way. We've got Henry Godwin at the top there. Mr. Hughes, I haven't ordered yet. I will get him at some point. Bob Holly, Skip. Like, not all these figures are out. Danhausen, the Halloween edition. Todd Pettingale, Ahmed Johnson. Like, there's some cool stuff there. But let's give him an open. See, nice blue there. It's like, this is really nice packaging. Like, it feels like you're getting a premium item, as the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast would say. But I'm gonna pull out March there. Now, his accessories are loose. He's got his hat, and I can see myself losing these sunglasses forever. So I'm going to very carefully take them out. That's the packaging. All right, so this figure is a tale of two feelings. I've heard people bitch. It's got glitter, which reminds me of handling baubles, which I like. I'm about to decorate my Christmas tree. His proportions are a little weird. Like, that arm is long, and that face is not the best macho face. The jacket is hard plastic. I don't know why I thought it was going to be soft, but I prefer the hard plastic, and Mattels material. The glitter and the detail on his gear is extraordinary. Now, these glasses are dying to be lost. So I'm going to get them on Poff as quick as possible. That's Randy with his glasses on. And we're going to get his cowboy hat on. Now, displaying him like that, now we're talking. Now we're talking. I like, the finger makes me want to put the arm up like that, but I don't. Like, it sort of makes them look weird. I don't know. I don't know how I want to display him. Like, he is a cool figure, but a flawed figure, is what I would say. But happy to have a Zombie Sailor March in my collection. I would love Zombie to get the rights to Bret Hart and Ultimate Warrior and some of my favorites and see what he would do with them. But I don't think they're ever leaving a Legends deal, because like a Warrior in a coat to go with this would be cool. WrestleMania 7, the Korea versus Korea match, one of my favorite matches. But yeah, a beautiful detail on the figure and stuff. Looks much better with the hat and the glasses on. But Zombie's arms are a little long. Like, they just are. I don't know why he's stubborn on this. I know Hasbro proportions weren't perfect, but yeah, it stands really well. Cool figure, but a flawed figure. But yeah, I just wanted to show you them. Big thank you to everybody that's been supporting the channel. Please like and subscribe. That's the best way to share the show. It's the best way to help me out, especially like and comment. I'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, everything. Comment on the video below. Thank you to everybody that supported me on the Patreon. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you in a little while.